Today, our topic is a counselor's perspective on pastoral care for and outreach to our seniors. Our speaker is Ms. Penny Quek, Mrs. Penny Quek. Penny is the superintendent of the School of Counselling, the English section, because we have Chinese and we have English. And she just published her dissertation for a PhD in counseling and psychology. Very, very proud of her. She has more than 15 years of counseling experience, specializing in marriage and family therapy. Penny has not only counseled clients who are in their golden years, she also lives with her 85-year-old mother-in-law, giving her first-hand exposure to issues which are encountered with the elderly. Now, my students, because this is part of our course, our students have to read from this book, and this is, let me see whether I can move it forward. Yes, this is Dr. Ko Nam Singh, the senior pastor of Glory Presbyterian. He has written this book. It's really his dissertation. Case study, I think Singapore Life Church or something. But chapter 4, 5, and the appendix are where you want to go to for the best parts of the book. My students have this as part of the reading, and if you registered, only if you registered, we will send you all the resources, including the PDF for today's talk, the chapters 4, 5, and the appendix, as well as the video link for today's session. Let me then now hand over the time to Penny, and she will take us through today's session. Give her a big hand.
Thank you for the introduction, Kelvin. I just want to also add, I'm a grandmother as well. Yes. Okay, let's just go to the Lord in prayer real quick. Oh God, by your Spirit, tell us what we need to hear and show us what we ought to do to obey Jesus Christ, our Savior. Amen. Okay, so Anne and Barry, not their real names, never thought that their golden years would look like this. In their prime, both were high flyers in their respective careers, well-respected, successful, deeply immersed in their professional lives. Anne is 84, Barry is 87 this year. They have 2 children, a daughter and a son. Growing up, both children were very close to their parents. As a young adult, the daughter was led to church by her friends, and she became a Christian. She started to pray for her parents' salvation. Her prayers were answered when, in their 50s, Anne and Barry finally came to know God. However, the relationship with their daughter became strained after a major disagreement when she decided to marry her American boyfriend while she was studying in the States. Not wanting her to be so far away from home, the parents, especially Anne, had a major disagreement with her. They disapproved. Although she still visits every now and then, once every few years, things were never the same again. Their son, on the other hand, married a local woman, but his wife, who came from an affluent family, looked down on Anne and Barry and wanted nothing to do with them. You would think that this only happens in drama, right? Korean and Chinese drama. So did I. But after his marriage, one day, he simply cut off all ties with his parents. No last call, no goodbyes. He just disappeared. He changed his mobile number, he moved house, and never told his parents where he went. This was 15 years ago. 10 years ago, at the age of 77, Barry was diagnosed with lymphoma. type of cancer that affects the lymphatic system. The doctors had very little hope for him, believing that chemotherapy would not make much of a difference for, given his age. But Barry chose to fight. Despite the prognosis of just 1 year, he defied odds, and he lived for the next, still living, at least for the 11 years. However, his struggles did not end there. He was also diagnosed with dementia, adding another layer of difficulty, right, through his journey. In the middle of last year, the doctor delivered another devastating news. His lymphoma had returned, this time affecting his liver. Annie, on the other hand, has begun to lose much of her hearing, making communication increasingly difficult. So as you can see, after they received Christ, the journey of faith was not as smooth as you would think. It's not smooth at all. Salvation came at a cost. In her own words, Annie said, it was as if God gave them a 5,000-watt electric shock to get their attention. And the effects of that shock continued on till today. What's the point of my story? It's not to make you cry, make you feel sorry, but to tell you that for many elderly individuals, life beyond retirement is not a bed of roses. Even after finding faith, the journey is rarely smooth. And after years of raising children, watching them build their own families and move on, what remains is not always the joyful season that they envision. Instead, the final years may be marked with loneliness, with losses and suffering, lingering until the day they take their final breath. As Christians, we are not called to look away from suffering. Am I right? But to step into it with love and compassion. We are called to minister to them in their suffering. In this case, the suffering of old age. And I think that's why all of you are seated here today. But I have a question. Why do you need a counselor's perspective? Why don't you, I've looked at the profile of all the attendees here today. There are a lot of you who are pastors, elders, a lot lah. Okay. Why don't just use the Bible on them? No offense, pastors. Why don't you just tell them to go to church? Why don't you tell them what the Bible verses say about suffering? That, we suffer while we are on earth, but we spend eternity with God. Wait, maybe that didn't work, huh? So I think perhaps what I can bring to the table is to share with you how to build a bridge between you and the people that you want to minister to those people who are suffering. In counseling, we call this building the therapeutic alliance with our clients. In layman's term, it simply means building a bridge of trust. One which leads the other person to be able to trust you and tell you what's happening in their lives. And perhaps, if that bridge is built enough, with enough trust, they are perhaps open to you to speak into their lives. Theologians have your homiletical, hermeneutical, exegetical skills to prepare for your sermon. Am I right? In counseling, we have different sets of skills to deal with the human psyche. Now, without this bridge of trust, it's hard for you, the pastors, the elders, the church workers, the ministers, to minister to the emotional, mental needs, pastoral needs of these people. Some of you may know the book Between Two Worlds by John Stott. where the author basically talks about how he bridges the gap between the biblical world, which the pastor is very familiar with. How do they bring the word to become alive? How they bridge that biblical world with the world of the audience so that the people can relate to what he is saying. So in a similar way, I'm hoping to help you bridge that gap between you and the person you're ministering to. Okay, so in today's talk, I hope to give you some insight how to do that from the counselor's perspective. So to prepare for this talk, I was given these 3 syllabus guided questions. Okay, I mean, we are a seminary, we are school. Okay, so school must have syllabus, must have questions. Okay, so I was given these 3. Now, I don't think I'm being humble when I say this, but I think probably you already know the answer to these questions. Maybe it's just everywhere, okay? I think especially for those of you who do work with elderly population, I'm quite sure you know the answer to this, okay? But I'm still very keen to cover this briefly, provide you the answers, and then we will shift gear to a counselor's perspective, okay? So let's start. The first question is this. What are the pastoral care needs amongst the elderly in Singapore? Well, as you can see, I've nicely grouped them up for you. These are the general care needs, pastoral care needs of the elderly population. Physical needs, I think, kind of quite, it includes poor physical health, chronic pain, mobility limitations, managing the physical and bodily illnesses and disabilities, right? And basically coping with the realities of mortality and physical decline. Spiritual needs refer to the struggles with faith in light of suffering and aging, right? Questions about where is God in the later years of their lives, right? Or navigating traditional religious beliefs versus some new faith commitments, and how sometimes, they struggle with feeling disconnected from the modern church culture. Okay? Some of you may see emotional needs a bit more, and that includes loneliness, isolation, lack of social engagement, feelings of rejection or feeling like I'm a burden to my family, coping with depression, grief, losses. Okay? Mental well-being needs include cognitive decline, such as dementia, memory loss, Alzheimer's disease, and not just medical health issues, but also issues such as anxiety and fear of losing independence, freedom, and even the psychological impact of aging and mortality. Now, when we talk about grief and loss, we don't really just refer to bereavements and deaths. Of course, there is the loss of spouses and friends, community, right? When you come to a certain age, well, people kind of, there was a picture that was tweeted to me, like people around you just fall down, right? They disappear. But there are also losses and grief over freedom, independence, and even dignity. When they grieve over the loss of control over their own lives. For example, in some dementia patients, as their condition progresses, their brain function declines, they may lose control over their bladder or their bowel control, right? So not only are they dealing with the illnesses or the neurocognitive disorder, but they are also grieving the loss of their dignity simply because they cannot control their bladder and the bowels. Or even the loss of roles and purposes in their own family life and society. They may have been, for example, the main breadwinner in the family for the last 40 years, right? But upon retirement, all that seemed to just have disappeared. Social and integrational disengagement needs refer to, for example, disengagement from the younger generations due to cultural and technological gaps. I think some of us also have that. Don't need to, be an elderly to do this, but sometimes you find that with the elderly struggling, for example, to be on video calls with the younger generation, right? And perhaps even the younger generation laughing at them and calling them boomers because they don't know how to use the video function, the FaceTime, WhatsApp video calls, and all that kind of thing. So struggles with family dynamics even. Okay? And also when, for example, raising children as they grow up and become adults and they're busy with their work, migration, all these are part of the struggles of social and intergenerational disengagement needs. Okay? Second question. What are some practical tips for caring for and reaching out to elderly in Singapore? I shall answer this in less than 10 words. The answer is to build a genuine relationship with them. You want to care for them, you want to reach out to them, you learn to build a genuine bridge, genuine relationship with them. The real question though, and one that is not explicitly asked in this question here, is how? The how. Okay? But this will be the main part of what I will cover today. So akan datang, okay? Third and last question. What are some common obstacles to faith amongst elderly Chinese in Singapore? Again, I have very nicely categorized them for you on this table. And actually, they are very self-explanatory. I'm sorry that's a little small. I don't know where you can see them. I'll just go through them briefly. But amongst the elderly, there's always that strong ties, to tradition and family heritage. So if they must go to church, or they so much go to church, they may be deemed to have betrayed their ancestors, their heritage, their tradition, right? Their fear of death and karma, it's also very real. They fear the curses and the anger of the gods that they have been worshipping all their lives. Many, like my own mother-in-law, believe in works and redemptions through good deeds. You tell them they are saved by faith through grace. It can feel very unsettling. At least with deeds, if they can do something about it, they have control. They have that sense of control. They can actively accumulate merits, right? Hoping to tip the scale in their favor. But grace, that's unpredictable. Something beyond their own efforts. And so with that, I'm done with the talk. We can all go home now. Now, what I know is this. If this is the list that you want from me, we are done. But I don't think so. What you want from me is a counselor's perspective. What you want from me is perhaps how we meet these needs. So let me first show you what we deem are the common pastoral care needs of the elderly. It's not very different from what I've shown you earlier, okay? But a bit more compressed because these are the common pastoral care needs. Okay? And of course, the common mental health problems that we see these days, depression and dementia. According to research, 1 in 5 elderly living in the community can be affected by depression. 2 in 5 living in nursing homes can be affected. And 1 in 4 people suffering from dementia will have clinical depression at some stage of their illnesses. At this point, I also want to emphasize that we do not and cannot look at these pastoral care needs in isolation. What I mean by that is that rarely when we see elderly folks, individuals, that they come with one of the pastoral care needs. It always overlaps. They always have overlapping pastoral care needs. Some of them may have all these happen to them all at the same time. Remember Annie and Barry? Well, if you recollect the story, you'll notice that they probably have all these needs. This list is by no means exhaustive, yeah? But as I said, it's just some of the more common pastoral care needs that we see in counseling. Now next, to bridge the gap between you and the person you want to minister to, you first need to build that bridge. Remember the answer to my second syllabus guided question? I said, in order to minister to this population, you need to build that bridge of trust. In counseling, like I said earlier, we call this the therapeutic alliance. In here, in part 1, I want to tell you what we need in order to build that bridge. Okay, first, we need to have an attitude of respect. Okay, second, we need to be present. Now, let's first talk about respect. The core of respect is this. We choose to believe that the person in front of me is made and redeemed by God. Same way, I am made and redeemed by God. And as we acknowledge that truth, we also accept that God has made us no better than the other. Agree? This humility before God, that posture of humility, helps us to remember this aspect for the other person. That brings me to ask, how do we view this elderly? We have to be real honest with ourselves. Do we view them as needing our help? They need us. They need our church. They need our ministry. Do we see them merely as recipients of your care, your ministry, your church, your resources? Now, many years ago, my previous church sought to evangelize to a nearby neighborhood, which primarily is made up of 2-bedroom flats, HDB flats. So I was quite a young Christian back then, and so with gifts in our hands, and I know that nowadays people bring rice bags, bags of rice, right? Like 5 kilo, 2 kilo, whatever they bring to the house, and so we go knocking on every door, and I say, "Oh, hi, I'm so and so. I'm from a church like few hundred meters away from you, right? And we would like to bless you with this gift. We would like to bless you with this bag of rice." Yeah. Anybody have that kind of experience, or is it just me? Okay. So if the person was kind enough to invite us in, we would spend some time visiting, and towards the end of the conversation or towards the end of that visit, we would almost always ask, "Why don't you come and visit our church?" Yes? Have or not? I know this may sound controversial when I say this, but if you step out a little bit of that picture and ask yourself, am I assuming that the person need my gift, need my ministry, need that bag of rice? Can my church meet their need? Is that what I am assuming? Because it sounds like, for me at least, I go there with that gift, I go there with the bag of rice with an agenda in mind. My agenda is, you come to my church because we can meet your need. Maybe we even assume, if I take this a little bit further, maybe we even assume that when they receive that gift, we have the right to invite them to church. Now, on the side, when I was telling this to Dr. Kevin Chong, he also told me another story, because he works a lot with foreign workers. Did you know, where's Dr. Kevin Chong? Can I share that story? Okay. The foreign workers reports back that actually a lot of these bags of rice, they found it in the rubbish chute, because there's just too much. Too many of us going knocking, giving gifts of bags of rice. Think about how this is in line with the core of respect. Dr. Forrest Cole, the book that Dr. Kevin Chong showed you just now, it's called Our Stories, His Story, has a chapter on redefining the elderly, right? Where he talks about the view that we take with the elderly. We need to relearn, redefine how we see these elderly individuals, not merely as recipients of our care, of our love, but also they are valuable members of the community. To be respectful about what they need and not what we think they need. They are made and redeemed by God, same way that I am. Now, to be respectful is also to have, to be genuine and authentic, because I think even if we have an agenda, okay, a great one, like evangelism, it's a great agenda, right? We are fake, because we are merely completing a task. Many times, the way to being genuine is through vulnerability. How many of you have ever felt that, when you share your vulnerability with someone, when you share something that's deep inside of you, they seem to draw closer to you? Or they'll tell you that they're very touched by your sharing, and they thank you for being vulnerable with them. Being vulnerable means there is no power play, there is no agenda. Returning to the core of respect, we are all equals, right? I do not hold more power than you, nor do you have more power over me. Being vulnerable that way is having that internal attitude of respect towards these individuals. Be respectful by giving them time and patience to the person you want to minister to. To be able to reflect empathy, you need to understand what they are going through. Yeah, to be able to reflect empathy, you need to understand what they are going through. To understand what they are going through, you need to have patience to hear their story. Hearing a story takes time. Relationship building takes time. Trust takes time to build. In contrast, fulfilling a task requires very little time. But you're not building a bridge when you fulfill a task. Now, I'm also not very sure how you feel about empathy. Empathy is a buzzword that, many know about. But did you know that empathy is not necessarily an easy choice? Because it requires emotional vulnerability and courage. Instead of trying to fix someone's pain or offer quick solutions, true empathy requires you to sit with that person in their discomfort and allowing them to connect with their emotions. Often, feelings that we also want to avoid. Now imagine this. You're sitting next to somebody who tells you that life is meaningless. All they can think about is they want to die. And you're not allowed to fix them. You cannot say, yeah, don't think about it. You cannot fix them. Just sit with that emotion. How do you like that feeling? It's unsettling, isn't it? Now, last but not least, allow God to work in the person. If you adopt an attitude of respect toward this individual, you will be able to see that you actually don't have to have an agenda. You just do you. Be you. Allow God to do His work in them instead. I want to tell you why I think that this is so important. Why is this attitude of respect so important? Why is it so important that we change the way we look at them with respect? Because when there is a shift in the language, we begin to see the elderly as valuable members of the society, as gatekeepers of tradition, rather than focusing them as a challenge we need to solve, or that they're merely consuming, or that they're just being needy, we're just meeting needs. Unless we change the way we see them, they will always be burdensome, irrelevant, or a deficit. Now, I will show you the difference when we have the attitude and respect and when we don't. Now, here are some examples. We don't say, I will pray for you and end there. Sorry, I know a lot of you say that. I say that too. But we don't end there. We say, I am sorry this happened to you. I don't even have the words to express my feelings. Because this shows your vulnerability on your part, that you're so moved that you are speechless. This is what I said when Annie and Barry shared with me about what the son did to them. Just complete cut off. Don't say, I'm sure God has His plans for you. Just hang in there. Genuine care, show genuine care and say, this must be very painful. I can't do much, but I want you to know I am here for you. We don't say, you have to be strong for the family. Say, it's okay to feel this way. You have been through a lot. Because this reflects empathy and true understanding. Don't say, don't dwell on the past as if the past don't matter or belittling their contribution in the past. You say, your experiences and memories matter. I'd love to hear more if you're up to sharing. Because this attitude helps us to redefine how we view the elderly. In Pastor Dr. Forrest Coe's words, redefining what's important. Now, when we talk about being present, we don't just mean being physically present. Okay, this is the second point, right? I can be present. I can be present, but I'm not listening to you. Now, I'm not saying that any one of you is doing that right now, but you can be here, but your mind is somewhere else. Perhaps you're thinking about, a problem at work, a phone call you need to make, a person you need to see, what your discussion content may be. Being present also means being emotionally and mentally present. I am 150, 200% present right here, right now. It involves acknowledgement. I can get to the slide. Okay, there you go. It involves acknowledgement when the other person is talking, nodding your head, yeah, reflecting that you are understanding, you are hearing. Sometimes it means more than that. Now, for example, I believe that elderly, or anyone for that matter, we all like to be acknowledged, right? Anybody here does not like to be acknowledged? Imagine that you are in church after service. You're talking to a friend of yours, and then suddenly your pastor comes and taps your shoulder and he says, hey, brother, so glad to see you in church today. Right? I remember you said last week that, your blood pressure was very high and you were going to see a doctor. So what's happening there? How is it now? It may be just a few-minute conversation by the pastor with you, but that's acknowledgement. Right? I acknowledge, I see you, I hear you. Okay? It may not need to take you a very long time or go somewhere else to attend. Maybe you're busy and you have to go and attend to different things. But I believe that it means a lot to be acknowledged. Active attention is when you perk up your ears and you actively listen. How many of you have been to a clinic and instead of looking at you in the eye, the doctor, just ask, what are your symptoms? How long already? Then he on the computer, right? And then he gives his diagnosis to you, and then you're on your way to getting your prescribed medication, and then the next patient is ushered in. Now, by the way, I'm just clarify and say, I'm not saying all doctors are like that. Okay, I also can imagine how chaotic it might be if the doctor all, treats everyone as if he's doing a counseling session. Okay, but you understand my point, okay? So pay attention also to the verbal language, not just the body language. Not just the verb. Pay attention to not just the verbal language, but also the body language. When you're present, you sometimes pick up all these cues. Being present also means validating the feelings of the individual, saying something like, this period must have been very difficult for you. Anne and Barry, right? For example, when they tell the story about the daughter, how relationship is, well, it's not broken, but right, it's not great. Okay? Or confirming that you heard correctly. Affirmation is a very powerful tool when you are being present. You're praising them for something that they did. And be genuine about it. You don't want to, wow, you did so well, but actually it's not them. So be genuine. Hear the story, understand the story, then you affirm. Lastly, probe by asking more information so as to have a proper and fuller understanding of what's happening in their lives. In being present, we don't say, there must be a reason for that when someone tells you that they're feeling snubbed by others. You don't say, there must be a reason for that lah. We say, I'm sorry this happened to you. It must have hurt. Because you want to validate their feelings of feeling snubbed. When the person is experiencing difficulty at work, for instance, we don't say, luckily you still have a job, right? Thinking that it's encouragement, what? Right? But we say, sounds like you are grateful for the job, but you don't sound all happy. What's happening? Okay? Well, I hope these have given you an idea to what it means to have that internal attitude of respect towards the elderly and how to be present with them. Let's take a break. And when we come back, I will do what we do best in the counseling school, and that is we shall look at some case studies. And that's where I will get you to interact with me a little bit more. Okay? Okay, so if I understand correctly, we will break for 15 minutes. So we'll be back here sharply at, okay, now there's a 2-minute break, gap. So come back sharply at 3:30. We start 3:30 on the dot. Okay? Ken? Thank you. Okay, it's exactly 3:30, yeah? Okay. Now, as I said earlier, we're going to use case studies, okay? I would like to bring to you how we apply what we say, okay? What do we do when the rubber meets the road, okay? In this part, we will have a bit of interaction. You can get ready your phone. I give you the QR code later. You can scan it later on, okay? But first, let me first give you the case. Case study 1. Where are you? Okay, there you go. Uncle P. Sorry, no names. Uncle P, who is just retired, and his wife used to attend church almost weekly. Recently, however, you've noticed his absence. You decide to visit his home, and you are greeted with a very wide smile, right, when he sees you. He tells you that he didn't think anyone would notice his absence, as he doesn't know many people in church. He also mentions that his wife, who is 10 years younger than him, remains quite active in church, but he feels quite left out. Now, as the pastor, what do you say to Uncle P? What can you do? Before you answer, I want to try to give you 4 steps what you should do. Okay? The first one is to validate his feelings. In simple terms, is to acknowledge and accept the person's feelings, thoughts, or experience without judgment. It's about making them feel heard, understood, and respected. Okay? Remember we talked about respect earlier. I know this may be very unfamiliar to some of you, But please don't worry, I will show you all these steps, step by step, I will show you by giving you specific examples and answers. Second step is to normalize their feelings. I actually just need you to remember those words I've highlighted in red. Okay? Normalize. To normalize someone's feeling means that to reassure them that what they're experiencing is common and is an understandable reaction, especially during challenging times. It's about helping them to feel that the emotions are valid. The key term is valid, and that it's not unusual or wrong. So don't feel as if so it makes them feel that they're not isolated in their experience, or that something is wrong with the way they think. Normalizing does not dismiss their feelings, but it provides comfort by indicating that the emotional response is typical for the situation. Maybe some of you had someone come to you and say something like this: it's been so long, I feel like I should move on. But then every time I think about it, I cry. In my head, maybe I'm thinking, what's wrong with that? Of course, I don't say it like that, right? But at the same time, there are also people who think, yeah, you should get over. It's been so long. It's been 2 years already, he's passed. Right? Encourage you, to don't think about it anymore. Be careful. Third step, we do reframing. It's a very psychological and counseling term. I apologize for that. But it refers to the process of changing the way a person perceives or interprets a situation, an event, or feeling in order to give it a new, more positive and constructive meaning. Essentially, it's about shifting perspective and viewing something in a different light. Reframing helps people to reduce negative thinking patterns and can be very powerful in promoting healthier coping mechanism and mental well-being. In a slightly similar fashion, I think I talked about this earlier, about redefining the elderly in Dr. Forrest Cole's book. It's also advocating for you to reframe how you view the elderly individuals. It's shifting the perspective of how you look at them, right? From somebody who needs your help to somebody who can contribute to our community and our society. Last but not least, the last step is when we offer hope and resources to the individual. So going back to the case of Uncle P. Anyone has any idea about how we may validate Uncle P? Let me see. There you go. Okay. So this is you can scan this QR code, and in there you can type and think through some of the things that you might want to say to Uncle P. Okay? Do participate in it. And so if you go back to what I said earlier, the 4 steps, validate his feelings. What would you say to validate his feelings? What would you say to normalize his feelings? What would you do in terms of reframing? What do you think you might be able to say? And fourthly, what kind of offer of hope or resources do you think you can offer to Uncle P? Let's switch to maybe 2. I think we have some responses. I like the one that says, "Uncle, we miss you also." I like that also when you say, "It's good to see you," right? You are being genuine with Uncle P. Okay, I saw one answer that says, "Would you like to join us in which ministry?" What's happening here? Problem fixing, solution finding. There's nothing wrong, okay, guys? Please don't get me wrong. It's nothing wrong with trying to find or offer resources and help. Yeah, but again, like I said, we have to be very careful that you first build the bridge, right? We first build that bridge. Yeah. We like to know more of who you are or something like that, right? I mean, tell me. So I'm sorry that I'm picking on pronouns here, but we is good if you go with a whole group of people or a few of you, two of you, but be very careful. Like I said, again, genuine is like, I would like to know more about you. I would like to know you more, right? Because that's more personal. It becomes, you're very genuine in wanting to know this person, yeah? Okay. Now, I want to show you. Do you think that you can say you must be feeling very lonely? Do you think that's a valid statement? No, Why? Why not? Sorry? Yeah, he might not be lonely. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Because he didn't say he was lonely, right? Okay, you're absolutely right. There was a published article, by the way, Alone in Old Age, Loneliness or Preference for Solitude, right, by Peter Tay. Being alone doesn't mean loneliness. Not having friends also does not mean he is lonely. So we want to be very careful, okay? So coming back to the case, he didn't say he was lonely, or neither did he indicate that he was. Okay? So one tip in our way of whether reframing or validating or normalizing is that we try to use the words that the person has used. Okay? We don't stray so far. While you say you one person by yourself, blah, 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 equates lonely. That's very far. Okay? So be careful about that. Which is why, being present is very important, right? Because when you are mentally present, you can actually hear a lot of these things, the cues that the person gives you, okay? Now, we can validate and say, I appreciate you sharing with me. It sounds like you're feeling left out. Because that's what he said. I'm using his words exactly, okay? Now, this part. Just join your wife's ministry group lah, problem solved. This is extremely problem-solving mode, okay? Yeah? But we can normalize and say, you mentioned that you have just retired. Retirement is a big transition. It's not uncommon to feel out of place suddenly. Maybe for all you know, this feeling left out, right? It's not really just because in church, but he's in a very strange environment, right? I mean, he normally goes to work, there's a routine, there's a certain routine and cadence to life. Suddenly, now I don't have to go to work. I have no obligation to be at a certain place by 9 o'clock in the morning, right? Okay, be careful about that. So you can normalize that way, okay? Then when he tells you that he's feeling left out, you don't say, I'm sure others are trying to reach out to you too. Because why? You don't know that, right? Help to reframe by saying, do you think this feeling might be due to the new season of adjustment, maybe? Okay? Don't say, just hang in there for a bit, I'm sure it will pass. Say, maybe this is an opportunity to do something new. Would you want to explore? And the truth is this, sometimes we don't even need you to be the one to connect them. You can introduce them to another person in your church or, to people in the ministry to say, hey, maybe this person want to explore. Can I introduce you to this person that I know, for example? Okay? So we work as a whole community, right? We don't work individually. Okay? Okay. So, question, yeah? If you have to kind of pinpoint what are some of the pastoral care needs in this case, what might it be? Just shout out your answer. Disconnected. What else? Anything else? Grief and loss are here, right? Yeah. Anything else? Well, you guys 100 marks, yeah? Okay. Yes. But the point I'm trying to make here, right, is this. The needs don't exist in isolation, right? We need to understand that often overlap. It's usually not one issue, but multiple issues, such as loneliness, abandonment, grief, all intertwined at the same time. In the Uncle P's case, yes, you are right. he's likely to be dealing with grief and loss and feeling disconnected. Okay? Now, case study 2. You're ready. The second 100 marks. Okay. This is the case, Auntie G. Okay, so Auntie G's husband, right? Now, the next thing would be, what do you say to Auntie G? What can you do? Again, same 4 steps. You validate, you normalize, you reframe, and you offer hope and resources. Okay? Same thing. No different. All 4 steps. I made it really simple for everybody. Just 4 steps. Okay, again, go to your Slido. You can do that. You're crying a lot because you missed uncle. Stating what you see, observation, right? Yeah. I just cry with her, huh? Wow. Okay, sorry, counselors cannot. Not that we cannot, but we are also trained to, because sometimes when emotions come to the forefront, it clouds our mind to be objective. But you're right, with pastors, with, lay helpers. Yeah. Right, yeah. Okay. Well, our answers are getting really very good. Tip-top answers. Wonderful, wonderful. Okay. Absolutely right. A lot of very good answers there. I like the one. I would cry too. Yep, yes. Okay. Actually, this answers the question of when we say they're dealing with grief and loss. Again, there's always that assumption that in this case, the grief may be over bereavement, the death of the husband. But there may also be loss. She may be grieving something else. So you are right in that sometimes we don't want to assume that because you miss uncle, right? But it could be that she's grieving something. Maybe grieving, for example, a traveling partner, a company, right? Although kind of you come back to, well, you kind of miss that person, but there's something else tied to that person, you see. It's not just the person per se. It's not just bereavement, but there are some losses that they're grieving. Yeah? But yeah, good question. Oh, sorry. Can you? Yeah, we can switch. Thank you. Because I think you all enjoy the say, don't say, right? Okay. I also like the say, don't say. All right. So, okay. What do you not say? You have to be strong. You have to be strong. Why not? That means I'm telling you, don't grieve. Be strong. You're not, in some ways, actually that's invalidating how they feel. You cannot be sad. You have to be strong. What do you say? I can only imagine how lost you must be feeling or how sad you might be feeling. It's not getting any easy. You're validating, right? Or there is no way this is easy for you, for anyone for that matter, right? For example, when I normalize, I can say, yeah, there's no way this is easy for anyone. Okay? You don't want to say the feeling will pass, right? You want to say grief is such a complex thing. Many people, even strong Christians, find it hard to be normal again after such a big change. Especially if you know, for example, the story, right? You know the husband, right? They are very, very close. Even though one's a believer and one's not, but they are very close. There is such a big change in her life. You don't want to say, I'm sure you'll be better after a few more months. Right? That's being presumptuous. You don't know. You can say, right now is a season to grieve, and perhaps a season of transformation and reflection. So allowing her to just sit on it a little bit. On whose agenda is for us to say, she needs to get over the grief. She needs to move on with life. How many of us, some of us who have experienced grief and loss, bereavement, right? And you feel sometimes people are pushing you forward and say, get over it, get over it, get over it. Heal, be healed soon, recover. Sometimes it takes longer. It's just grief is just such a complex thing. And it's different for everyone. You have to remember that. No one grieves the same way. Oh, I like this next one. If you die, your children will be so guilty. Give them some time. I'm sure they'll come back. It's a lot of guilt tripping, right? I mean, I know this, this is funny lah, but right, we want to be careful about what we say. Because, see, sometimes that's why I say empathy is not necessarily always an easy choice. Because there you are, you kanjong, you're anxious that if I say the wrong thing, or if I don't say the right thing, she might just, do something silly. She might just take her own life. So you are feeling anxious. So, and when people are anxious, sometimes you really say things that you don't mean. Because you're really anxious. You don't want her to do something silly in your mind. Okay? What can you say? You can say, you're not alone in this journey. There are people, including myself. Right? You put yourself up there, the vulnerability, who care deeply for you. In time, I pray that God will bring your family back into your life. Because right now, she's feeling disconnected, right? Yeah, she's feeling all alone in her journey. He's offering hope. So coming next to the pastoral care needs, what do you think she's dealing with here? Sorry? Okay, grief and loss, I hear. Abandonment, I hear. Loneliness, I hear. Disconnected. Depression. Dementia? No. Okay, thank you. We are all not having dementia. There you go. Absolutely 100%. So it's 200 marks to you already, okay? Okay. Now, last case. Are you guys enjoying this? Thank you. Okay, case 3. Auntie H is an only child in her 60s, unmarried and a strong believer. She had been working while caring for her elderly parents, both in the late 80s, until last year when her father passed away. So after his passing, she received some inheritance. So with that financial security, she quit a job to take care of her own mother full-time. Previously, she had a helper. Okay. So recently, as her leader, whether a cell group, Bible study group, or whatever group she's in, or ministry, you notice that she appears more tired, easily frustrated and stressed, even though she continues to attend church and Bible study groups diligently. So, same thing. What do you say to Auntie H? What can you do? But don't forget that this part, the slight difference is that now they don't come to you. You are going to them. Okay? But the 4 steps are still the same. Okay, then the reason why I highlight this, that you are going to them, is that I want to tell you that the 4 steps don't change. You still validate, you still normalize, you still reframe, and you still offer your hope and resources. Okay? Now, I like some of the questions, but I also want to just highlight that sometimes when we talk to people, right, don't do a verbal diarrhea. One question at a time. Give them time to feedback, come back to you, because you really want, like I said, right, it requires what? Patience and time, right? You be patient. Ask one question. How have you been coping, with after your dad has passed? One question. Give it some time, and then she brings up something else, you can talk about it. But don't, how you are? So is everything okay? Your mom is okay? Your dad, how, with the passing, are you coping well? Which question you want me to answer first? Yeah? And it's true. I really have had people say that. I don't know which question to answer first. Of course, sometimes in frustration when they say that. I like the answer that says, I noticed this, that you're feeling this way, right? Are you going through any, perhaps an even slightly better way of asking that would be, how are you feeling? Right? instead of asking, the other thing, you say, is everything all right at home? Yes? No? Okay, then you're stumped. What do I say next? Yeah. So the other tip is this. We try not to ask close-ended questions. Are you questions? Are you this? Are you that? Close-ended questions means answers that is a yes or a no. I mean, of course, some people elaborate lah, right? But you don't assume, right, that they will elaborate. So the best would be ask questions like what, how, to kind of like continue the conversation rather than close at once. Yeah. I like the one that we say, I affirm you for coming. That's nice. But I think we can be a bit more subtle lah. I really appreciate you being so regular at our sessions, for example. Yeah. But I must say really good answers, and thank you so much for all these answers. Sorry, I can't. Sorry that my eyesight is so bad. I can't read that. Otherwise, I would have tried to give you some feedback. But really, really good answers. I also try to cut down this part so that we have a bit more time for Q&A. Okay. Now, okay. There you go. Okay. I noticed you've been very short-tempered recently. That is an observation, all right. But is it validating? Yeah, we have to ask ourselves that. But you can say, I can see that you're carrying a heavy burden. You state your observation, right? By taking care of your mom full time after your dad passed. How has it been for you? You're being very respectful. You're probing still, right? And you're validating what you see. You see this. And also sometimes we want to check, right? Like one of you asked, are we being assumptions when we say certain things? So be careful. I do want to check with you. I see that you're carrying a heavy load, but are you? Right? Okay. We don't say, maybe you want to be careful how your internal frustration might come up looking like anger to other people. Yeah. But you can say, when giving care full time, it's common to feel frustrated. Since you are giving so much of yourself to care for your family. To be honest, I probably would. What you're doing is you're normalizing, and more importantly here, you're being vulnerable. Okay? You don't say, you must do some self-care and stop at that. It's the same as what we said earlier, I will pray for you and stop at that. Okay? You can say, you have made big sacrifice to care for your mom. Taking care of yourself is also a key part to be able to care for others. You're offering resources, yes, but you're also reframing. Rather than me telling you, again, right? So again, like I said, when we redefine, I'm assuming that you need advice from me. You need what I can offer you. Okay? But here, I'm not. I'm just saying, taking care of yourself is also important. Right? It gives the autonomy back to the elderly individual that I'm trying to minister to. Okay? This one also good. You should just get back your old helper lah. Why make it so difficult for yourself? Yeah. So I think you could say something like, would it be good to have some respite care services? Just for someone to offer you assistance for short periods of time and for you to recharge. Yeah? Something like that. Okay? Okay, let's test on this. What's the answer? What are some of the issues that you might see here? Sorry? Grief and loss? Yes. Okay. How about, loneliness? Not loneliness or not? Okay. There's loneliness. Disconnection? Is they feeling disconnected? How about abandonment? I don't see people nodding. Okay, maybe not. Okay. Actually, loneliness, I'm not so sure. But I could be wrong. Like I said, you have to understand the person. You have to be there, get to know them, then you can do that. Okay? But I have just identified grief and loss and disconnect, feeling of disconnected. Okay? So, okay. Thank you for your participation. I've come to a summary. So I want to just say that pastoral care needs are not classified nicely, right? In some, I think I've shown you guys when we did the case study, and you can see that they don't exist in isolation, right? Okay, so and they all sometimes happen all at the same time. So even though the earlier one that I put up, that table with all the nicely categorized pastoral care needs, all is nice, but we must understand that they don't exist in isolation with the people that we deal with. Okay. The next one is that to build a bridge, you have to have an attitude of respect. This is an internal part. How we look at them. What is required of me? What is the posture, if I may put it that way? What's the posture that I need to have? Okay? Also be present. What does it mean to be present for the people I'm ministering to? And of course, the practical applications, 4 steps. Validate, normalize, reframe, offer hope and resources. Okay? Now, at the same time, I can tell you that the truth is there are lots of resources out there. The Singapore government really is doing a lot. Churches is doing a lot. Individual organizations doing a lot for this population. So you can really find a lot of resources out there. So I want to encourage you, if you really feel like you lack the resources, just Google or find somebody. Right? A lot of you I know are working with this population, and you actually have a lot of resources everywhere. What I'm showing you here is just not even the tip of the scale. Okay? And also, there are some good resources, but I want to just kind of say this, that a lot of great things out there, but again, be careful about doing these things until you have built your bridge of trust. And that's what we are trying to do here, right? First, you don't want to do so many things. There are lots of programs, activities, and all that out there. But first, we want to be able to do these things only when you have managed to build that bridge. Okay, and I hope that that's what we're trying to do today. And I'm giving you insight to it. Okay, and with that, thank you. So we're going to now have about 15, 20 minutes of Q&A. Okay, the mic's roaming. So if you have a question, you can just put up your hand, and I try to answer as to the point as possible. But I really just hope that, with the steps, all that, it helps you guys to,
we have one here.
Like Kelong like that. Let me ask Penny, but really so interesting. Thank you for that. When you were thinking of the topic, counselor's perspective, what is the opposite of that? You were trying to address some. What would you call that? What perspective?
What's the opposite of a counselor's perspective? Okay, so I think in part of respect, I kind of alluded to this a little bit. The perspective would be that I am more knowledgeable. I am more, that there's that balance of power that I am serving, kind of like you are receiving from me. I think that's quite harmful. To make them feel like you need me. If I don't provide it, that I think that balance of power, I think, which it's quite, for me at least, I think it's scary when we take that stance. But we want to be able to, like I said, again, bridging the gap. Because if I adopt that internal posture of, hey, you need me, I think I come across as very didactic, very harsh, and that And you make it, you are sometimes, I think we sometimes will make it that so much so that, right, the person feels like, wow, I'm grieving even more now because I seem to have I seem to have lost independence of how I think, of my thoughts. They may have a very functional brain, but when we come across that way, we make them lose that independence of the faculty to thoughts, to feelings. You're invalidating them.
Thanks for those thoughts that you share, very helpful. I'm just thinking of one other aspect. There are situations whereby, whatever you may say may not be very helpful at that point of time. For example, people are going through a very traumatized situation. Yeah. And I'm just thinking of one other aspect, of course, something to do with touch, physical touch. Of course, this one must be done appropriately and discreetly. So I'm just saying that how then, that situation come whereby, you don't even have to say anything. Let's say a man to old people or woman, just put your hand around the shoulder, and that in itself, that momentary moment may provide a lot of comfort to the person. May not receiving all those words of affirmation or validation or whatsoever. So I thought that may come in very strongly on that. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, thank you for the suggestion. So yes, there are a lot of moments when you can sit silently with a person without saying anything. But that moment of silence can also be very awkward for them. What's he doing? Is he? I'm sorry, I want to say, is he falling asleep on me? Because I think sometimes it's good to do that, because sometimes there's no words. But I want to use words to say, Uncle S, I really have no words. But I want to just sit next to you. Let me just be here with you. I don't say anything else after that. Because I think if you don't say anything, he doesn't know what to expect. But if you say something, and like you said, sometimes don't have to affirm, right? My presence alone sometimes really helps. Putting a hand, yes and no, it can be 50-50. You don't know. That's why we say, build that bridge. Understand the person. Is he okay to touch? Is he open to it? Not everybody is. We want to be careful. If, after a while, when he sees you, he say, hey, brother, okay. Then you know that he's okay. So when that happens, you can sit with him and say, I'm sorry, Uncle S. Right, I want you to know I'm here. And then don't say anything. And that's perfectly fine. In fact, that's wonderful. If you can sit next to the person, not say anything, and they feel your presence. I think that's the key when we talk about being present. They feel your presence. They know that you are there for them. If they want to say something, they can. You're not going to judge them. But wonderful suggestion. Thank you.
Thanks, Penny. I really appreciate the don'ts, because I think I've blundered millions of times. And I think that also drives people away from church, because they don't know why, but whatever is said is like it hurts. It just isn't accepting them. So that's my take. I think it really helps to speak and ask. And I remember when my dad passed on, this girl came along and said, Ivan, I cannot believe it, you cried. I'm like, excuse me, that's my dad. Why are you talking? Oh, you're so spiritual, I don't expect you to cry. I mean, that's like way off, right? But I'm like, if I didn't get over it, I think I would have I don't want to talk to you anymore. You don't understand anything. But it's crazy, the expectations that people have. And I think sometimes we carry that as well when we talk to people, especially when we have gone through certain things, we impose that. on them. So yeah, I really appreciate all the should say things. I'm going to meet a friend later on, and I think all this is really, really helpful. really helpful. I'm glad I came. Thanks.
I also want to add on to that story, and that when I spoke to Anne, she also shared with me that her sister is very, very like, no, if you're a Christian, don't come near me. And she tells me why. Because when they were younger, and before her father became a Christian, there's this church, don't know one church or how many churches there are, but will come knocking on the door every single week. Hey, come to church. You need to come to church. Your problems will be solved. And she was like, stop it. Just stop pressurizing me. Why? I'm not saying that evangelizing is no good. Please don't hear me wrong. It is good. But the person who said that you need to come to church has an agenda. She doesn't feel accepted because you have an agenda. You want to increase your number to one more with her presence. So be very careful. Again, I come to that core of respect. Are we assuming that they need us, that they need God? We all need God, the truth, right? But how that comes across to them is us. It's how we deliver.
Thank you very much for teaching us how to minister to vulnerable people. Actually, I learned from the onset of a dear friend whose husband passed away. And she was angry at another sister. Why was she angry at another sister? You know why? Because she felt that at my time of grief, the sister don't understand how I feel. And what the sister said was, I understand. What? And she said, what do you understand? You don't understand. I'm losing my beloved husband. And you say, I understand. And since that day, I learned from her, never use this word. I understand, because I don't understand. So please never use this word, I understand, because none of us can ever understand a relationship between two persons. It may be a father to a daughter or a son, and we must never, can I just use this word, never think of the same scenario, meaning that, father and son relationship may not be so close, who knows? So the best thing to do, I learned, is to say nothing. And can I just give my personal experience to all of you? My mother passed away 2 years ago. I was a caregiver. It was very traumatic because my mother passed away when I was away. And on the day of a cremation, here comes this sister. Cremation, we are going to leave that place. And she came to me and said, hey, the toilet, portable toilet is very dirty. I'm like, the body is going out. You're concerned about the toilet. But I must say that I wasn't very Christian-like at that moment. But she was my best friend. I wasn't very Christ-like, okay? I was like, the casket is going and you are concerned about the toilet. And of course, she said she was very offended because I was concerned about the toilet. I mean, she was concerned about the toilet and I was not very polite to her. But if you're in my situation, the emotions are so raw, would you blame me? Would you blame me? If you blame me, it's okay. Come to me privately. It's okay, no problem. But what I meant is that I wasn't very Christ-like. Okay? So that's all I want to say. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Penny, there are a few questions up there too.
Oh, okay. So just to supplement that also, when you say, because sometimes it's a bit presumptuous of us to say, I understand what you're going through, because you may not actually. And like I said, grief is complex, losses are complex. Sometimes if you don't understand fully and you say, I understand, that puts the other person off. No, you don't. So we want to be careful about that. First question, how do you minister or build that bridge with somebody who maybe cognitively a bit disabled? The answer is really sometimes they may not hear you, but they sense you. I would say sometimes you can just be there. The truth is, okay, give you a bit of self-disclosure and vulnerability here. So my father-in-law suffered from aneurysm from 2012. He lived for the next 7 years until 2019, just before COVID. For those 7 years, we have no idea whether he knew what's going on. He has, his brain functions, he breathes, he talks, he breathes normally on his own. There is no, tube feeding. There's no, he's not on life support, okay? We tube feed him and all that. So, can we talk to him? He doesn't show any signs. We can say, we sometimes we'll hold his hand and say, Papa, squeeze my hand if you can hear me. No reaction. Any brain activity? We don't know. But when, so my mother-in-law asked for some TCM guy to come and do suction, suck out the bad blood, apparently. You see him? He's in pain. I don't know, maybe it's physiological, I don't know. So what we decided to do to minister to him, really sometimes just to sit there. Hey, Papa, today, I was at work and and at the time my daughter was in school. Oh, alamak, her A-levels, she got 3 rates there. How Papa, So we just talk to him like normal. And sometimes we just sit there, Papa, I'm here. Sit there. Sometimes I do my own thing or, whatever. So we take turns to do that. Do we know if he knows? I don't know. God knows. But I think that we can still minister if our heart is there. Which reminds me, one other point that I forgot to say is this. Now, I know that some of us are very anxious and we do, have a real heart for this population, the elderly. Do it within your means. And when I said earlier, do you, be you. And what I'm trying to say is this. You may not have to minister to the person 7 days a week. You don't even have to minister to 7 people the whole week. If you can only, your capacity is only 2 persons a week, 1 hour each, do that. Because I believe that there's so many of us here, that if we all just do 1 day a month and minister to, let's say, 1 elderly, we have covered 1 month. If you have 30 of you who's willing to minister to him, right? So be you, when I say that, it's really to say, do it within your own means, your capacity. Don't stretch yourself and thinking that they need my help. I just do me because God will provide the rest. Okay? So, just to add to that point.
Sorry, I have a question here.
Maybe we can just do one last question.
Okay. We see a lot of don't say, right? And then I think most of us will agree that we do all those don't say. So how do we do damage control?
I give you a short answer, okay? We are imperfect. We are imperfect. So you just move forward in life being better. I can tell you, counselors, there are a lot of counselors here. In our first year, when we go in and be a counselor, we say all the things we're not supposed to say. We ask all the why questions. Alamak, hold my tongue. But the truth is we learn. So damage control is as you move forward, you improve yourself, you learn, and you prevent yourself. You try to refrain from saying such things. That's damage control. Love them even more. Show them, your love, your genuineness, your care, your respect, even more. Is that the last question? Okay. I just want to close with this. I give the last 5 minutes to Dr. Kelvin. I started with a story. I'm going to give you the end of that story. So Anne and Barry are still struggling in the suffering, but they are so happy. And I talk to them, they always have the joy in them, despite their situation. They have God. They know that, a lot of things have happened. And I tell you, Anne, Barry speaks less, but Anne talks a lot. So Anne tells me, Penny, all these experiences I want to share with people. I want to tell people sometimes, appropriately, of course, when they sometimes when they share things with me, I want to tell them how I'm vulnerable too, right? What happened to my family, my kids and all that. It's because God must have given me this experience for some reason. And you know what? I'm not going to bring that back to God because God already knows. I don't have to retell the story to God, she says. I want to tell the story to people here. Right? So they are elderly. I'm so amazed, she drives her husband around at 84. I'm like, and are you sure you really want to drive? So I offer, sometimes I say, okay, which day, if you want, I can drive you. I say, no, it's okay. She's very independent. Not just that, but it's really joyful to see how she, even at her age, they're ministering to people, even despite their health condition or whatever, they minister to others. Sometimes even younger than themselves. So thank God for these people. And they have really learned. When I shared with her my first, they say, yeah, we do that, right? Yeah. They asked the husband, we do that, right? Yeah. So we kept checking on each other, But yeah. So I just want to tell you that despite what I've described to you guys, they are leading really very wonderful and fruitful lives. Thank you.